Today in this lecture, we will talk about the increase in GFR that occurs due to increased intake of proteins. Now, why the glomerular filtration rate increases when somebody takes high amount of proteins in diet. To explain this concept, we need to understand tubuloglomerular feedback mechanism and autoregulation of GFR and renal blood flow. In the last 3-4 lectures, we have talked about the tubuloglomerular feedback mechanism and autoregulation of GFR and renal blood flow so many times, but we will need to summarize it quickly to understand the increase in GFR due to increased intake of proteins. Now, the increase in GFR that occurs due to high intake of proteins is actually due to the decreased supply of sodium to the macula densa. Now, we have discussed so many times that in the distal tubule, there are some specialized cells which are known as the macula densa. They are part of the juxtaglomerular complex, and they are in close proximity with the afferent arteriole and efferent arteriole, and the decreased delivery of sodium to the macula densa is also responsible for increased GFR due to increased protein intake. How? We are going to explain it how it occurs. So, to summarize it again quickly, we have discussed this thing so many times that the kidney has thousands of nephrons, and each nephron basically receives the blood through the afferent and efferent arteriole. Then the blood filtration occurs into the Bowman's capsule. From the Bowman's capsule, filtrate moves into the proximal tubule, then the loop of Henle, then the distal tubule, and this is basically the process of urine formation. Then urine get out of the body. Now, if we cut this region, the Bowman's capsule, afferent, efferent arteriole, and this distal tubule, we will this area will look like this diagram. Here we have the distal tubule, here we have the Bowman's capsule, the afferent arteriole, and efferent arteriole. And this area, the distal tubule, and the specialized cells in the distal tubule, the macula densa, in relation to the afferent and efferent arteriole, are responsible for the tubuloglomerular feedback mechanism, which is important in autoregulation. Now, when somebody takes a lot of proteins in diet, when someone is eating a lot of meat, now what happens is that normally the amino acids do not get filtered. They do not get filtered. But now, this is again the afferent arteriole and the efferent arteriole. If somebody has taken a lot of proteins, some of the amino acids will get filtered. They will get filtered, and the filtered amino acids will get reabsorbed. They will get reabsorbed in the proximal tubule. So here we have the proximal tubule. These blue color tubules are the proximal tubule. From these tubules, the amino acids get reabsorbed into the blood. Here the filtration occurs and then the reabsorption occurs. When the amino acids are reabsorbed from the proximal tubule, these amino acids are absorbed along with the sodium. Now, the amount of sodium in the fluid that is going through the loop of Henle and the distal tubule, when it reaches the macula densa at this region, it is sensed by the macula densa cell. Now, the macula densa cells can sense the decreased sodium concentration in the distal tubule fluid. The filtrate which is going through the distal tubule has low concentration of sodium because a lot of sodium has been absorbed from the proximal tubule along with the amino acids. Now, once this low sodium has been detected by the macula densa, it will get activated and it will start the tubuloglomerular feedback mechanism, because whenever there is low level of sodium, the macula densa perceive it as a low arterial pressure. It considers it as a low arterial pressure. So through some signals from the macula densa cells, it will increase resistance in the afferent arteriole. And it will release renin from the juxtaglomerular cells. Both these factors will increase the resistance in afferent arteriole and decrease the resistance in efferent arteriole. Now, the macula densa will decrease the resistance. It will decrease resistance in afferent arteriole. The resistance will decrease, and through renin, angiotensin 2 will be formed. Angiotensin 2 will increase resistance. It will start constriction of the efferent arteriole. So decrease resistance in the afferent arteriole and increase resistance in the efferent. Both these changes will lead to increase in glomerular hydrostatic pressure, and due to increase in glomerular hydrostatic pressure, the filtration process will increase and the GFR will increase. So the increase in GFR will occur due to increased amino acid absorption at the proximal tubule, and we can say that due to increased intake of proteins, the increase in GFR occurs, and it is due to absorption of extra sodium at the proximal convoluted tubule along with the amino acids, which lead to decreased supply of sodium to the distal tubule, which is sensed by the macula densa, and it then starts sequence of events which leads to decreased resistance in afferent arteriole, increased resistance in efferent arteriole due to angiotensin 2. Now, we have explained so many times with this curve that by decreasing resistance in the afferent arteriole, by decreasing resistance in efferent arteriole, the GFR increases. By decreasing resistance in afferent arteriole, the GFR increases. But in the efferent arteriole, when we start increasing the resistance, when the resistance in efferent arteriole start increasing, the GFR initially rises. So both the changes brought by the macula densa will ultimately lead to increase in glomerular hydrostatic pressure and increase in the GFR. Now, basically this tubuloglomerular feedback mechanism, it is normally used for the autoregulation of the GFR and renal blood flow. And autoregulation of GFR and renal blood flow simply means that despite of changes in the arterial pressure, the level of the GFR, level of glomerular filtration, and the amount of blood flow to the kidney, it remains nearly normal. Now, this is the normal range. And despite of changes in the arterial pressure, it remains nearly normal for a long time. Only when the arterial pressure decreases tremendously, only then the GFR will fall and the blood flow will fall. Now, if you compare these two curves with this curve, you see when the arterial pressure is increasing, the urine output is increasing. When the arterial pressure is decreasing, the urine output is decreasing. Because the urine output is not only dependent on GFR and blood flow, it is also somewhat related on the pressure directly, on the arterial pressure directly. But if you compare these two curves, here you see that despite of changes in the arterial pressure, despite of increasing arterial pressure, this curve is not increasing like this one. So it is basically due to the autoregulation of the GFR. Now, we have discussed in detail that the autoregulation is due to tubuloglomerular feedback mechanism, which involves the macula densa and the JG cells, and it is also due to myogenic autoregulation. In which whenever the arterial pressure rises, the stretch of the arteries will lead to constriction of the arteries. Stretch due to high pressure will lead to contraction of the smooth muscles and constriction of these blood vessels, which will increase the resistance in these vessels and will not allow big changes to occur due to high arterial pressure. But the autoregulation due to tubuloglomerular feedback mechanism is more important when the arterial pressure is decreasing. But the autoregulation of GFR and blood flow due to myogenic autoregulation is more important when the arterial pressure is increasing. So in this lecture, we were mostly talking, basically focusing on why the GFR increases due to increased intake of protein, and the answer is because of excess sodium absorption along with the amino acid in the proximal tubule, which leads to decreased delivery of sodium to the distal tubule and the macula densa cell. And this also proves that basically the regulation of the GFR and renal blood flow is basically due to the sodium level detection. So the regulation of GFR and renal blood flow is dependent upon the concentration of sodium in the distal tubule, especially at the macula densa cells. Thanks a lot for watching the video.